the last few days I've been seeing a video that's been bounced around on TikTok about betta fish, and so it's kind of like, oh, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit today. In this video it talks about how no one should breed betta fish for various reasons. They explain several of them, and we'll talk about them a little bit. One of them being the abuse that betta fish receive while in the fish hobby. And obviously not for abusing fish or any other types of animals in any sense, but they talk about how due to fish being betta fish specifically being abused in the fish hobby, that's a way to solve that would just be to have no one ever breed betta fish again, and let them just take their natural course, which for obvious reasons this is never anything that's going to come up and like actually come to pass. And I also think that they're a little bit too high on their horse to be able to actually understand like the realities of life. Don't really want to offend anybody, but I think it's kind of just virtue signaling in this aspect. And so yeah, I love fish, and I think betta fish are a great fish, and making it so no one can have them would be, I feel like, a real negative effect on the hobby, and would be not something great in that aspect. With that, let's just break down some of the reasons why I think that betta fish should be continually being bred in the hobby and should be a fish that people can have. First one, they're talking about abuse of fish. Obviously, education is key in helping people understand that the proper care of fish, and there's not just one way to do it. I'll probably dive into another video on a different day about the proper ways to take care of a betta. And I mean, I'm not going to say that everybody's going to agree with how I think the betta fish should be treated. I'm not super hardcore on one particular way. I think there's actually many ways to take care of betta fish, and some of them are not popular opinions. But I believe education is the number one way to help take care of fish specifically betta fish being neglected or being abused. The next one is, I think that betta fish are an excellent beginner fish. They're a really hardy fish, can be kept in a wide variety of environments, especially if you're getting some of the common ones you can find at most pet stores. They've been bred so long in the hobby, much like guppies, that regardless of what type of water you have or how often you do water changes, how often you feed them, they'll bounce back and stay great and be able to withstand a lot of people going through a learning curve of figuring out how to take care of fish properly. And so I think they're an excellent fish in that aspect. Because of their hardiness, is a great fish for people to come in, get into the hobby, learn how to take care of a fish, and then potentially move on and select other fish that catch their interest and grow that skill set that they have to be able to take care of more wild types of fish. Not only meaning like wild type, but I mean like as in wild caught, but more cool, rare, interesting, or even just any type of fish in that aspect. It opens up. It's a way for the door to be open so they can learn about fish. Next, betta fish are in the wild actually fairly endangered. Some types of betta fish are only found in one or two small swampy or pond areas, and so without that aspect of it, it's going to make it so that if you eliminate breeding of any betta fish, then the only potential for some of them surviving of going extinct is for people to keep them and breed them. It's a very unique and cool fish. I have personally some embellis betta fish right now, and no, they're not wild caught and they're not exactly like the ones in the wild, but they are line bred ones to be more colorful, and they're awesome. They're in my 10-gallon tank right now. I'm hoping that they color up specifically and get healthier I mean, because they have to be an optimal shaped for breeding. Because I would love, one of my goals since I was like 10 years old was to breed betta fish. Just the whole blowing the bubbles in the water and creating a safe haven for their babies to hatch and grow, and having the dad take care of the babies instead of the mom just fascinated me as a child. Still to this day, awesome. Still to this day, I have not been able to breed betta fish. I've bred a lot of other fish, but for some reason I cannot manage the task of breeding betta fish, even though for most people they say they're extremely easy to breed. So we're still working on that in my aspect of that. So we'll keep going on with that. Leading on to the next part, breeding betta fish is a fun experience that I feel like that a lot of people, it's an attainable fish to be able to breed for most people, and be able to do it in a small area, and there's a demand for them. So breeding them is something that could help people breach into the hobby. I love breeding fish and finding them new homes, selling them. I love that whole process, and so I just assume everybody else wants to do that too. And so betta fish are a great one because there's always a demand for betta fish, which leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about. Even if you were able to like say, hey, in the US betta fish are completely illegal, we're not going to allow them to be bred, no one can have them, no one can keep them, just like every other thing in the world, people in other countries or even people in the US decide that they're not going to follow that, and then they're going to end up being bred anyway. There's too much of a demand for betta fish. They're one of the most iconic fish in the hobby. I mean, outside of like guppies and goldfish, they're probably the most well-known fish. So I just don't think that demand would allow that to happen, and it'd be creating something that would for no reason need to happen. But the demand for betta fish are way too high for something like that to be an effective way to help with abuse of these fish like they're proposing. And so I don't know, I feel like why not take the route that is much easier for those fish to be taken care of properly. Education, not only in fish keepers but also those who sell fish, and if you find out someone is taking care of a betta fish in a way that you find abusive, don't jump down their throat. Don't get way in after them, because you don't want to, like, one, if you're really aggressive with them, they're not going to listen and learn from that situation, and they'll just keep doing it. The best way is to encourage them, talk about how much their fish is awesome, and then over time helping them with that educational process of learning how to take care of a fish or an animal properly. And I mean, I would argue that many fish keepers and breeders, and probably some of the biggest ones you know in the hobby that you're either seeing on YouTube or in other aspects, they got their start either keeping guppies, goldfish, or a betta fish. And arguably you could say that all of those three fish have extremely often, or the most often, to be in bad situations, but they're also the fish that have the capability of handling that and helping someone learn to become a better fish keeper. It's a gateway fish into fish keeping, and I don't think it's something we should shy away from and say that no one should breed them. But yeah, that's just my opinion.